But Bruno Guìmarães, Newcastle perspective, they've rejected a formal offer below their valuation. Arsenal's perspective, they're finalising this deal. So when we report it, it's naturally quite sensitive. My understanding is that talks are advanced. Optically, from Newcastle's perspective, it's great to have Bruno Guìmarães back with them in La Manga in Spain, because this is not an Alexander Isak situation. The player has never refused to train or be there, but he did delay his travel, and one of the reasons why is because, again, this deal is close. Newcastle United fans might not like to hear it, but that's the reality according to our information on TalkSport. And I sense this is going to get done and get agreed relatively quickly now, and Arsenal may have to, of course, make one more formal bid or just finesse the one that's already on the table. There's ways of rejecting a bid out of hand with no encouragement or engagement, or alternatively saying it's not quite there but you're not far off. And according to my information, it's more the latter than the former, and I still fully expect Bruno Guìmarães to be an Arsenal player, and sooner rather than later. And I don't think that would be a terrible thing, because within Newcastle, as much as they say they want to keep, there's a price at which they'll sell, and the sooner this gets resolved, the sooner they can spend some of that money, and the sooner Matthias Jassler can understand who's in and who's out. Because the last thing any new manager would want, and the last thing Eddie Howe wanted last summer, is to find that this is a saga that runs all summer. And I still maintain that the Isak situation in part led to Eddie Howe reassessing his position. He was never going to walk last summer, but then when it repeats itself with Anthony Gordon, Sandro Tonali, and now potentially Guìmarães, you can understand why Eddie Howe eventually changed his perspective and thought that it was better that somebody else leads the club forwards. And if Jassler begins being asked every single week about Bruno Guìmarães and if he's staying or going all the way until deadline day, and then if he leaves at that point, that's not a great position, and it's not the best possible start, which is why I sense that Newcastle also want quick clarity, and that's why my anticipation is that Arsenal are confident.
When you're talking about Bruno Guìmarães, look, I think it's pretty much a done deal. I like the way you said all we have to do is potentially finesse the current bid. What do you think someone like that brings? Is he coming into play as a 6? Is he coming into play as an 8? Is he coming in to stand in or support Declan Rice? Myself and Ollie were talking about it earlier on, but we're not 100% sure. What do you say?
Yeah, I think he's versatile, and that's part of the appeal. Norgard's departed. They need to strengthen in the middle. And I still sense, but it's more a question for Mikel Arteta, that Declan Rice in the last kind of year and a half at West Ham, and even the first 6 to 9 months at Arsenal, was given quite a lot of attacking freedom. And then you start realising that Martin Odegaard comes back. They've got to think about the long-term future of Max Dowman. At the moment, they've still got Ethan Nwaneri. And don't forget, Eberechi Eze was signed as a central attacker in the 10 rather than a left winger. So when you add all of that up, it feels like they need somebody a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more engine room, high energy, can break through the lines, progressive passer with some metronome qualities, but from a deeper position. And Rice can do that as well. But if they play together, it's probably Declan Rice pushing a bit further forwards and Bruno Guìmarães being an old-school central midfielder that's high energy and can get both back and forwards. And that's a very underrated role, because you don't always get the glory. Sometimes you're the pass before the pass that leads to the assist that gets the goal. But of course, at Newcastle, he had output. He had goal contributions. He could burst into the box as well, and he could take free kicks. So it's a nice balance, I think, that Arsenal will have, because there's that depth, there's that ability to play him or Rice, and maybe even a solution where it's him and Rice. And then you'd obviously have to question, is Zubimendi the one that falls out of the side? But I tell you something, Joel, if Arsenal are serious, if Arsenal are going to back themselves up, if Arsenal are going to consolidate whilst the other 5 of the big 6 are in flux and change, even though Spurs and Chelsea are having really promising windows, but if Arsenal are going to play on this stability and back up last season and challenge on all fronts and win more silverware, they're going to need these selection headaches.
Let's say he signed and he's alongside Declan Rice in midfield. Is it the best pair in the Premier League?
They're definitely up there, Tom. And, you know, I'm going to be objective and say, you know, Rodri, Elliot Anderson, that's a great pairing. Obviously, Tonali and Fernandes, even at Tottenham, I think that's a great pairing. Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, good pairing, you know. So there are some very good pairings there, but I do believe that with Rice and Guìmarães, I feel like they, of all of those, I would probably say, as athletes as well as football players, they would be the best partnership in terms of fitness, physicality, both boxes. I think tactically, Rodri and Elliot Anderson might be better, but I think definitely for the way Arsenal play, I wouldn't swap that pairing for any of the others.
Okay. We've asked you to create a